The first thing to let go of is the idea that a message with a countdown must be a message from heaven. Urgency has a particular sound. It rushes, it corners, it implies you're late to your own life. When someone tells you only 10 seconds left, they're not describing God's timing as much as they're trying to take over yours. If the divine has anything to do with you at all, it doesn't need to borrow the tactics of a pop-up ad. The real trap isn't the spiritual language. It's the belief that panic equals importance. And the moment you accept that belief, you become easy to steer because you'll confuse intensity with truth. On the surface, a dramatic warning feels like care. It says you are chosen, singled out, noticed. It flatters a bruise you might not even admit you have, the fear of being overlooked. But being chosen can turn into a costume you wear to avoid being responsible for ordinary, unglamorous choices. It's easier to imagine a cosmic emergency than to face a quiet pattern you've been repeating for years. The claim that Archangel Michael is speaking to you today can be comforting, and comfort is not nothing. Still, comfort that depends on fear is unstable, like a bridge built from paper. It holds until the first real weight is placed on it. Here is the contrast most people miss. What looks like a sign often looks like a shortcut. The urgent message arrives when you're tired, lonely, or scrolling late at night, and it feels like a hand reaching down into your mess. Meanwhile, the things that actually shape you are slow and almost boring. How you speak to the person you live with, whether you keep the promise you made to yourself, whether you avoid the doctor's appointment you've been postponing, whether you apologize without defending yourself. The dramatic voice claims to pull you out of your life, but reality asks you to step deeper into it. One offers escape, the other offers change. They look similar from a distance because both use the word now, but they demand opposite kinds of attention. If you've ever watched how people behave when they believe a countdown, you've seen the difference between appearance and reality in real time. Someone sees a video insisting that God is trying to reach them, and they feel an electric jolt, like a door has opened. They comment, "Amen." They share it. They promise to be different. And for 10 minutes, their heart is full. Then the feeling fades and the same life waits in the same shape. The appearance is a breakthrough. The reality is a spike of emotion that evaporates without a channel. Emotion isn't the enemy. The mistake is treating emotion as an outcome instead of a fuel. Fuel without a place to go just burns. Underneath that mistake is a psychological dynamic that doesn't care what language you wrap it in. The mind craves certainty, especially when you're overwhelmed. And certainty is rarely available in the places that hurt most. So, the mind grabs a story that explains everything at once. You're chosen, something big is happening, time is short, and your suffering has a special meaning. It's an efficient story, and efficiency can feel like relief, but it also rearranges your priorities in a subtle way. It makes you hunt for confirmation rather than build evidence. You start measuring your life by signs, coincidences, and messages instead of by outcomes, conversations, and decisions. You don't notice the switch because the story feels spiritual, and spirituality is supposed to be above ordinary measurement. Another layer sits even deeper, shame. Not the loud kind that screams in your head, but the quiet kind that makes you feel you have to earn the right to be okay. A countdown message offers a seductive bargain. If you respond correctly, immediately, you can finally be safe, finally be approved, finally be forgiven, finally be loved. It turns grace into a task you might fail. That's why it hooks so hard. It's not only fear of missing God, it's fear that you've already missed your chance at everything. Yet, the most human thing about faith, at its healthiest, is that it doesn't depend on your performance under pressure. It asks for sincerity, not speed. It asks for truth, not theatrics. Picture a small scene that doesn't look like a revelation until you understand it. A woman is sitting in her car outside a grocery store, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. Her phone is propped up in the cup holder, playing a clip that insists Archangel Michael is speaking and that she has 10 seconds to accept the message or lose the blessing. She feels her throat tighten. She thinks about her father, who hasn't spoken to her in months, about the debt notices in her kitchen drawer, about the sharp way she snapped at her kid this morning. Her thumb hovers over share. That's the moment the clip wants. Reflex, display, proof. Instead, she turns the phone face down. She doesn't do something grand. She goes inside, buys what she came for, drives home, and before she unloads the bags, she sends one text she's avoided for weeks. I've been stubborn. I miss you. Can we talk? No applause, no countdown, no choir. Just a small act that changes what tomorrow can be. Now, for a counterexample that cuts against the easy narrative. There are people who ignore these dramatic messages entirely and still experience something unmistakably spiritual, not because they are better, but because they refuse to let fear be the translator. A man who has never watched religious videos walks past a hospital chapel every day on his way to visit his mother. One afternoon, he steps inside, not to chase a sign, but because he can't hold his grief alone anymore. He sits in a back pew and says out loud, "If you're there, help me not become bitter." No miracle happens in the room. He leaves and still has to watch his mother suffer, but over the next week, he finds himself speaking to the nurses with patience, calling his siblings instead of withdrawing, and taking a walk when anger threatens to swallow him. If there's a message in that, it isn't wrapped in urgency. It's woven into behavior. It doesn't announce that he has chosen. It makes him choose. Nuance matters here because it's possible to hold two truths at once without turning either into a weapon. Some people truly feel strengthened by devotional content, by reminders of protection, by the image of Archangel Michael as courage and defense. That comfort can be real, and dismissing it as foolish would be lazy and cruel. The problem is not the symbol. It's the insistence that the symbol arrives with a timer and that your worth depends on how you respond publicly and instantly. A healthy spiritual message leaves room for agency and silence. An unhealthy one pressures you into performance, keeps you dependent on the next hit of reassurance, and quietly teaches you that you can't trust your own discernment. If God is trying to reach you, the message will hold up under a slower gaze. It won't collapse when you refuse to panic. Here's the paradox that doesn't feel comforting, but feels honest. The more you chase a thunderclap, the less you hear the ordinary voice. The 10 seconds left style of message trains your attention to crave crisis, and crisis becomes the only place you think meaning exists. But meaning isn't confined to emergencies. It's distributed in the dull hours you'd rather skip. Sometimes the most decisive spiritual moment is not when you feel chosen, but when you stop needing to feel chosen and simply do what is right while no one is watching. That can look like ending an affair you justified as destiny, admitting you need treatment, forgiving a friend without reopening the wound, or setting a boundary that will make you unpopular. None of that fits into a viral clip. It's too quiet to sell. So if you're waiting for proof that heaven is leaning toward you, notice what's already leaning. Your conscience, your longing, your discomfort with the way things are, your brief flashes of clarity when you realize you're tired of your own excuses. Those aren't always pleasant, but they are often the only honest signals you get. The strange thing is that the message you most want, a guarantee, a dramatic sign, a countdown that forces a decision, can become the very thing that keeps you from hearing what's actually being asked of you. Because the call, when it's real, doesn't usually shout 10 seconds. It waits, not because it is weak, but because it respects that your life is not a stage. And when you finally respond, it will look less like a public declaration and more like a private, irreversible shift. You stop performing urgency and you start living truth.